Now, the Bram Weinstein Show on Washington's new home for sports, ESPN 630.
Hey, babies. Hey, babies, hey, babies, 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 babies. Hi, everyone. Hi, everyone. What's up?
What's going on?
All right over there?
I'm all right. We're gonna push through.
Oh, boy. Callow gave us all a good scare 2 minutes ago. Looked at me, started looking like he was praying. And I'm like, uh-oh.
I wasn't praying. I was
Told me you're not feeling great.
just breathing.
There.
Just breathing.
Not feeling
some
great over there?
meditation. Some meditation going
All right,
on.
you let me know if I got to do any emergency services over here.
What are you going to do?
I'm good in a crisis.
That's true.
I don't think I'm real good in a crisis.
No, you got kids, so you've seen some things.
I watched my daughter fall down a flight of stairs when she was like 6. And I went into full-on recovery mode.
Makes my parents feel great if they're listening. So there you
go.
go.
Oh, yeah, no. I'm great in a crisis.
Okay. Right.
I'm play-by-play voice. Anything that happens live, I could react to.
Take it as it comes.
Take it as it comes. I won't know how to get us into national
Yeah,
programming.
you're screwed on that. Yeah.
It'll just be dead air. If you just hear dead air for 2 hours, it's because I took Callow to the hospital.
Probably I could.
I'll save your life. Yeah. But the radio station's gonna have to fend for itself at that point. I prioritize
in my last breath. I'll hit the satellite button. Because that's just something I think I would know how to do when I'm all out of sorts. That's the type of person
That's
I am.
how I have to open the eulogy. This is how important all of this was to him. The last thing he did was make sure that the radio station was okay.
That's about right.
Yeah. Yeah.
There are 3 different program directors that would agree with you across my career.
No offense, but not me. Yeah. It's gonna take a back seat. If I'm having some kind of critical thing, the last thing I'm worried about is how I'm closing the segment.
That's fair.
We're just going blank. See if anybody figures that out. What happened?
I got chills. I didn't get paralyzed from the waist down or anything over here. So.
Did you walk into a walk-in freezer?
No.
What happened?
It was pretty cold in here today, I think.
Oh.
Okay. So we had 2 ACs and 2 of our air conditioners going.
Guys down the halls gave you the chills.
Not so much on that. Whatever I have,
guys down the hall.
Whatever I have might be a hoax.
It might be. Probably fake. Fake news. You don't have chills.
That's
you
right.
made it up.
Yeah, I made it up. I made it up.
Don't you dare put a mask on. I don't want to hear about it. But you learned all about that in your public high school, didn't you?
What's your opening segment?
I just sent you an interesting soundbite that I would like to play.
Okay.
From Ryan. It's 15 seconds. Okay. And Ryan Clark was on NFL Live either yesterday. I can't believe if this was yesterday, why this hasn't made the circulation big time.
We do have a 2-minute version that Andy pulled if you want that one
it's Ryan Clark on
and Schefter on Aiyuk. It's both of them.
Okay.
You want that version?
Let's do that one because I'd rather hear the context because I just heard the 15-second version.
Okay.
Brandon Aiyuk and Jaden Daniels are friends.
BFFs.
Okay. Yes, they played together at Arizona State before Aiyuk went pro and was drafted by the 49ers out of Arizona State, and Jaden Daniels eventually transferred to LSU and continued his collegiate career. So Aiyuk obviously has been in the league for 4 years, but they played together. Yeah. And we talked about it, laughed how there's this old video of Daniels throwing a touchdown pass to him against Justin Herbert.
Yeah, right.
In the Arizona State-Oregon game.
It's like, how many years has this happened?
Right.
Yeah.
Wow. Which is actually that's good, actually.
Right.
You see one of those, you're like, well, that's good.
That's classic.
That's classic. Yeah. So we know they're friends. Last week, we talked about they had a FaceTime conversation that somehow ended up somebody posted it on TikTok,
right,
where Aiyuk admits that the 49ers, quote, don't want me back, which we talked about for an hour, which was they don't want to pay you a ton of money.
Yeah.
They want you to play on this 5th-year option where you're under market value at this point, but they clearly don't want to give you $30 million a year.
That's right. Right.
What you're asking for.
And because it matters. They don't want me back. Well, that does mean, do they not want you back after this season? That matters. That matters.
Again, you don't know what's going to happen after this season.
Right.
Because Deebo Samuel may not be there after this season,
right.
and then they do want you back. This stuff needs to play out. The 49ers, I think it was a lot of smoke, and I think it was real. I think if they got the right trade for him, I think they probably would have pulled the trigger on it, but they clearly didn't. They were probably asking for a first-round pick, and in these cases, you can get that for a guy you don't have to pay, but you can't get it for a guy you have to pay and give up the first-round pick.
Yep.
So I'm sure plenty of teams offered an asset that they didn't feel was valuable enough in return for him, so they sucked it up, and they ended up doing this, which is well, you're stuck.
Right.
And they could franchise him next year, too. That's the other thing. Like, they have him under control.
Yeah, he's under control. Yep.
Right. And John Lynch's, like, take on it was at the time, we've, like, turned the page on it. Like, the draft's over. There's no reason to trade him now.
Yep.
We're not going to have anybody to replace him for this year. They did just pick a receiver at the end of the first round. So we know, Clash of the Titans, Debo or Ayuk's not going to be there after this year, but that's after this year.
Yeah.
Their plans are set. So I don't think anything's going to change. Ayuk, though, clearly wants to shake the trees a little bit here.
Well, because
he is.
He wants his long-term deal. I mean,
he wants his long-term deal. Let's see if he does the sit-in or whatever it is. Like, sounds like it's heading in that direction. Will the Niners buckle and give him a deal? Well, when Debo shook the tree hard on them, they did.
They did, yeah.
But will they give it to him? And then I guess they could give it to him and kind of wink, wink, know that this is Samuel's last year then move off of that.
Right.
Or they could play it out the way it is. Either way, Aiyuk is trying to get some finality to this by putting out there on social media, they don't want me back, which means after this year, not this year.
Yeah.
So to clarify, because they're not saying don't come back and play. They want him to play on this contract.
Basically, barring them falling apart before the deadline. He's not getting moved this season.
Well, the only way he gets his way is he has to literally sit out and not collect his money.
Right.
But, he is under contract with them either way. So that just told, like, there's no end in sight there. That tolls the contract if you do that, meaning they get the year back. So his agent will know this, and he'll learn this the hard way, too. I think in the end, he's just going to end up playing on this unless the Niners have a change of heart about him and decide to give him the money to avoid all of that. But I don't expect that to happen. But he's shaking the trees pretty hard here to try to make it uncomfortable as we head into camp. And he put that out purposefully last week. He's talking literally to Jaden Daniels, says they don't want me back. We know they're buddies.
Going shopping in Tyson's corner.
And, like when we talked about it last week, where I'm like, listen, on the priority list for the Commanders, I mean, obviously adding another primary receiver is something they have to seriously consider. And considering while I am with the 49ers here, I'm not sure he's a top 5 receiver that gets paid that way. I will take into account the relationship he has with this quarterback, that's a big deal to me.
Yep.
Like, to have a guy who's that close with him, and he is really good. It's not like he's not. He is really good. I'll take that into account when thinking about this, right?
Yep.
I would have preferred go after Justin Jefferson, who's obviously like a number one difference-making player. But I'll take into account this. Would I, quote-unquote, overpay a guy who's already got the relationship with the quarterback? I'll hear it out considering the cap room.
Right.
The Commanders didn't do anything like this. Maybe the timing wasn't right to take a swing for something like this, and also weren't giving up a first-round pick for him, right?
Yep.
I bet you if the Niners were willing to take one of those third-round picks or something like that, this might have happened. Right. Maybe. This might have happened.
Right. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
I
might
agree.
have. Okay. Well, he's continuing to shake the trees pretty hard. And I just saw this a minute ago, which I can't believe this was not on my radar and is not being, touted big time. But Ryan Clark went on NFL Live and was talking with Adam Schefter about the Aiyuk situation. So take a listen to this.
They're actually meeting with the San Francisco 49ers today. He and his representation, Ryan Williams of Athletes First, and Brandon Aiyuk told us that he wanted to set this meeting up himself. And when he was sitting with the Pivot, he said that he's taking these negotiations personal, that the way that they have negotiated with him, the way that they have told him why he's worth what he's worth, it has touched him. It has affected him. He says he wants to be in San Francisco first, but is comfortable playing elsewhere if that's something that the San Francisco 49ers are willing to do via trade. And I will tell you this, when he sat with us, he did not walk into the room alone. First, it was Brandon Aiyuk. Second, it was Jaden Daniels. I'm not a tea leaf reader, but the way that sounds is that Brandon Aiyuk wouldn't mind playing in Washington.
Well, listen, he played with Jaden Daniels. I'm sure the two would love to get together. There were some conversations at one point between the 49ers and the Commanders. Commanders were interested, but they decided not to do that deal. And so the 49ers didn't want to move on from Brandon Aiyuk anyway. And I know he spoke with Ryan Clark, RC there, but the fact of the matter is, despite the fact that he said the 49ers don't want him back anymore, that's just not true. They absolutely do want him back, and according to RC, they are meeting today. That meeting will involve the 49ers general manager, John Lynch, the head coach, Kyle Shanahan. They'll be meeting to have a nice discussion here before training camp is scheduled to kick off next month. We'll see what comes out of that meeting later today between all those sides. RC will bring us the latest on SportsCenter later, on NFL Live tomorrow.
I'm done
sure
now, Shefty.
We'll be waiting with bated breath. Yep. Yep. And then next week, Laura, just so you know, Laura, I'm hosting, or I want to host, a episode of The Pivot next week after Ryan gets done delivering.
Ryan, can we get that done?
I'd like to see that.
Adam Schefter on The Pivot. He's going to guest
I would
host
love
The Pivot.
Schefter on The Pivot. He can't host it, though. He can't host it. He already has his own podcast.
All right, so Schefter jealous of The Pivot getting some of the news these days. All right. Let's go back to this. Okay, The Pivot is Ryan Clark's podcast, and it's a very good one, by the way. They did one with McLaurin last year. It was outstanding.
Amazing.
It's shot very well. He's with two other, I can't remember who, ex-players. I think Fred Taylor's one of them, and they do a very good job. And this show is well produced. Okay, so let me start with this idea that Ryan Clark clearly has a show set up with Brandon Aiyuk, who's going to talk wants to go on this show to openly talk about probably his relationship with the 49ers. He acted in that soundbite as if he was surprised by the appearance of Jaden Daniels.
Yep.
I have a hard time believing that. So I would like some clarification on this, that you're telling me that you set up this shoot with Brandon Aiyuk and didn't know that Jaden Daniels was going to show up to that shoot?
Right. Yeah.
I don't believe that.
Right.
I really don't. And maybe Ryan is trying to go, oh, he probably shouldn't have said that. Because this is not a, hey, just come by. No, they have like a 4-person shoot. It's set up. It's highly overproduced. That's not how this works. You don't get surprise guests just showing up there. So he's trying to pitch at this moment, at least if I heard him right, that he was surprised by Jaden Daniels showing up, which I believe him that they wanted to do this together on some level, but I don't believe that he didn't know that was happening, even though he posed it that way.
I mean, it very well could have been one. I don't know where it was. So was Jaden on the West Coast, or was this over the weekend when Aiyuk was at Tyson's corner, right, with him? So
he also does the pivot in person with people.
Yes.
He doesn't do it remotely.
Right.
So it'd be one thing if he's like, "Hey, we did a Zoom and for the show,
Jaden
just happened to come in there." Then I would believe it. But that's not what they do. They do full sit down 3-4 person shoots. It's produced.
Yeah.
So I don't believe him that he didn't know he was coming, but he did pose it that way.
Right.
That's kind of a minor point to this, but the way he said it made you think like, oh my God, I was shocked when Jaden Daniels walked into the room. Really, were you?
Right. I mean, he also could have just...
This isn't Springer, where it's like, guess who's behind the curtain? Your ex-husband. Like, that's not what this is.
It could also be plausible deniability so he doesn't get in trouble with other teams. Of like, hey, if my guy Ayuk's coming to meet you, is he bringing any other players from other rosters? Because we'd rather not have that happen.
See, here's the other thing. Brandon Aiyuk is under contract.
That's right. Yes.
Okay?
Right.
Jaden Daniels, he's already learned the hard way about the gambling policy. Right. It was just a joke with him and his former teammate Malik Neighbors when they're like, who's going to win Rookie of the Year? That was a joke, and I'm glad the NFL didn't come down on them. But here's one that's a bigger rule. You can't tamper.
Yep, right, exactly.
Jaden Daniels is under contract as a player with the Commanders. He cannot openly try to recruit. Now, we know behind the scenes these guys talk to one another and their friends.
They are friends, though,
but everyone understands that. But you're not allowed to publicly recruit for another player that's under contract somewhere else. You're not allowed to do that, technically.
Right.
And so if he does do that, and maybe this is where Ryan's like, surprise, surprise, he showed up, because Ryan knows you can't actually do that. You can get the Commanders in trouble. The Falcons just lost a draft pick for going out of their way, clearly, to go after Kirk Cousins before he was literally available, right? The Vikings have to say it's okay for you to talk to him publicly or at least privately. And there's no way that the 49ers and Brandon Aiyuk's camp have been told, yeah, you can go seek a deal somewhere else. No way. So we got to be careful here, right? And Jaden's got to be careful here that, like, he's a representative of the team. If anything on that show insinuates that he's trying to recruit Aiyuk or try to get the Niners to trade him to Washington, that's a violation that the team's got to be very, very, very careful about, even if it is as innocent as, he's my really good friend. We'd love to play together. He's having contractual problems with the other team. They'd probably be open to trading him. Our GM drafted him. Maybe he would want him here. Yeah, all the dots connect, but we can't lose a draft pick over this. So that's the first thing I want to say about it. We can't lose a draft pick over this.
I highly doubt that's going to happen, and I'm sure the way that the Commanders have handled Jaden, too, of actually like protecting him pretty much the second they drafted him, I'm sure Peters has even been like, hey, man, see you're hanging out with Aiyuk. If you get asked
This
about
is too much on a limb. I got to tell you, when they put that TikTok up last week, Aiyuk said it. Daniels didn't say anything, or at least the posted part of it.
Right.
He didn't say anything.
He laughed, yeah.
He laughed, didn't say anything. Fine, you've done nothing wrong.
Yep.
If you go on Ryan Clark's show and say anything like, yeah, I'd love to play with my friend Brandon Aiyuk, that's tampering.
Yeah.
So not only would you have to, if you could get a trade done, give up whatever asset, the Niners are going to put in a problem with you.
Sure.
And they're going to get, so he's got to be, it's not a huge thing until we lose a draft pick over it.
Yeah.
So I would just advise, and I'm sure the team is telling him, you need to cut this
That's
out.
what I was going to say.
You got to cut this. We don't care if you guys talk all night long because you're best friends. Stop publicizing it.
Yeah, right.
This happens all the time.
Be best friends in secret.
This happens all the time that guys want to play with one another. No kidding.
Right.
No kidding. I do think there's something weird about C.J. Stroud going on with Micah Parsons all the time.
Sure. Right.
There's something odd about that.
Yeah.
The J.J. Redick just had to dump his podcast because he's now the coach of the Lakers, and everyone insinuated that, LeBron was in on the fix to make J.J. the coach, and they're both plausibly trying to deny that, which is ridiculous. So we know this stuff. It's not like it doesn't happen. You can't do it out in the open. So I'm just trying to be protective of the organization here, and I'm sure Adam Peters and the ownership group and the coaching staff, they've got to reel Jaden back in and go, hey, man, you can be best friends with the guy. We don't care about that. And if he's available, we don't have to give anything up. We'll talk to him about bringing him here. But you got to stop this because we can't fall into a category of tampering. We're not losing assets over something like that. So they got to be careful here.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm sure the Commanders have said to him, if you're asked about this, you have to just say he's under contract with another team. We
were good friends. We played really well together.
We enjoyed playing with each other.
Yeah.
It'd be great if
we're just really good friends.
It'd be great if we got to do that one day, but he's under contract with another team. That's just all he has to say. And he's fine.
Yes.
He's in the clear. And I would think the Commanders, because they are way smarter than they used to be, have told him, this is what you have to say.
I would hope so. It's just now the second time in a week that I've heard Jaden Daniels publicly acknowledge. This is clearly an open secret. Aiyuk not only wants to get traded, he'd love to play with his friend.
Yeah, right.
And I'd love to have him at the right price. I would too. There's just a way you have to go about this, and I'm not going to lose some third-round pick over it because the 49ers file a complaint about the Commanders because their quarterback won't stop showing up sitting next to him when he's under contract. So, Jaden, please. Listen, I yelled about John Wall forever. Go recruit people. Go recruit people. Yes, I want him to get good players to want to come here and play with us. That's a good thing. There is a way to go about this. Now, granted, I haven't seen this episode yet.
Sure. Right. Exactly.
And this episode's being taped. And then Clark admits that they're meeting, and Schefter says they're meeting.
Right.
So they're probably not going to air it until after that meeting is complete.
Right. Exactly.
Because that will change the context. If they've already had the conversation and it's not going anywhere, well, the conversation that they had may stand. If the Niners change their tune and give him whatever he's looking for, then that conversation might be a moot point and they may never air this episode.
That's right. Yeah, right. Exactly.
Listen, I'm not against acquiring good players, and he's one of them. I have fell under the category of I just don't know that I want to spend $30 million on him because I don't know that this is where T. Higgins is too. T. Higgins is a really good player. He's not a top 5 difference-making, altering player. Jamar Chase is, right? Justin Jefferson is. Tyreek Hill is. CeeDee Lamb might be now.
I think so. Yeah.
Devontae Adams is. There are players like that it's like, you know what? You just got to pay the going rate because they're the best of the best.
Right.
He's a tier below that. He's really, really, really good. But because of the relationship with Daniels, I'm willing to more hear out this idea of, I know he's really good.
Yep.
He might not be like the difference-making player, but that relationship's a big deal to me.
Sure.
And so I'm willing to hear it out. I just want to be careful here, but now this is the second time that not only is he shaking the trees, I want to get out of here if you're not going to pay me, and that's normal practice for a player, but he's saying to our guy, I want this to happen, which is so obvious what he wants to have happen. And with Peters being the GM who drafted him and knows him, it's even more of a dot connected of, oh,
Well,
It's almost like he's just trying to convince Peters, like, just do it, man.
Yeah.
Like, I'll be great for you, I promise. Just do it.
to which I'm sure Peters is probably kicking back him in the most basic terms. Dude, don't worry. If we want him, we can get him next year.
Next year.
There's no need to rush this. Also, with your thoughts on Aiyuk being the tier below, that tier below is available every year, right? Like,
Yes.
T. Higgins, Aiyuk.
He
the
is
names
buddies with Daniels, though.
I know,
that
but
should go a long way.
but that
I agree
tier-
that's an advantage. If you're not going to get Jefferson and you're going to go get a really good receiver, well, I would like the guy that's played with this guy and they're very close.
Sure.
I put value on that.
Sure, but if Tyreek Hill gets cut next year, you can get him without trading a draft pick and send him to a 2-year fat deal.
Correct.
It's the better deal, actually, long
Right.
term.
If Devontae Adams gets pissed because the Raiders stink because
Right.
they don't have a quarterback and
Yes.
he's just available, well, guess what? I want to talk to him too.
Correct, exactly. So that's why I keep saying, like, I get it that they're friends, but this ain't the one because guys like him become available every offseason now. Nobody really wants to pay that.
This team also did not spend this kind of money on anybody yet.
Yep. Right.
And I think that is purposeful. They could have. They still have 40-something million in cap space. So the other crazy part is they could eat it and do it.
Yep, that's
For
right.
sure, they could eat it and do it. But I think if they were going to do it, they were going to do it before the draft. They didn't. No one else did. Probably because the asking price was high.
Sure. Yep.
They weren't going to do it. And now Aiyuk is stuck, but I think he's stuck for the rest of the year. At this point, I'm just doing damage control, which please, best friend of Brandon Aiyuk, stop doing things publicly with him until he's literally available. If
Right.
he becomes a free agent, all bets are off. Go lobby him publicly. Lobbying privately is one thing. Lobbying publicly is different. And if we end up losing some draft pick, but we have to acquire him to make that happen.
Sure.
But if we end up losing some draft pick over it, that's a huge own goal that we don't need.
Especially when they only have 6 picks next year. Like, they're already down a pick.
And
So-
we still need to build this. We still need a left tackle. We still need an edge rusher.
Yep.
We still need maybe another corner. And obviously we need a receiver. And then, a lot of these guys we signed are on 1-2-year deals. Like, there's other spots that might need to be filled. We can't lose draft capital.
Yeah, right.
Especially if we're not going to get him.
Right. The other,
Which the Niners don't seem to be in any rush to trade him at this point because they're not getting what they want for him.
The other half of this too, and we've discussed it at length here, is that what if I think not this ownership, but this front office group, I think they also want to see what they've got because you can't evaluate anything from last year.
I agree.
Like we've seen dots and we saw the flashes in year 1, we didn't see much of it in year 2, right? So I think they're looking at it and going, you know what? Let's see what we've got when Terry has a hopefully competent quarterback for the first time in his career. Let's see what Dotson looks like when someone's
I'm
actually
gonna talk
throw
about
to
him too because Keim wrote about him, and
Yeah.
he's a wild card to me. Like,
Yeah, I
he
agree.
could explode in
Yes.
this offense. That's
Yes.
a possibility.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, you've got this guy what will be on year 4
Yep.
of a rookie contract, making you're not paying him $30 million a year, who could put up similar numbers. Maybe it's maybes.
Right.
But we need to find this out. And I think they're using the year to find this out. They don't want to spend like this. What I would say to Jaden at this point, because he's excited, obviously,
Sure,
and then
sure.
his buddy might be available. I don't blame him for wanting
yeah,
him to come.
right,
I don't
yeah.
blame him at all. We just can't do it publicly. What I would say to him if I'm Peters and Quinn and Kingsbury is this. Look, you go do your job. Do the things we think you're capable of. With what we have here, we're going to get you help next year.
Right.
Because we will have cap room again.
Yep.
We're just not taking those swings yet because we need to see where our resources really need to go.
That's right.
But if, we draft a left tackle, we still have all this cap room, and Aiyuk is available again, we'll take a look at him.
Yep.
But you got to let us do our job. You need to focus on what you have right now. Do the best you can right now in your rookie year. But we'll go full Houston like they did if we're taking off.
right.
And you have that kind of rookie season, and we feel like we're ready to put some money into expanding the weapons on offense, we'll do it.
Yeah.
But we need you to focus on that and less on who's not here.
Right.
Stop focusing on who's not here. Focus on who is here. Let's get it done. That's what I would say to him at this point. And please, 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 we don't care how often you talk to your best friend. Stop doing it publicly.
Yep, that's right.
Because he's
Exactly.
under contract with a different team. So you're going to get us in. Because if he ends up here, there will be a complaint filed against this team immediately.
Correct.
Stop going on Ryan Clark's show with him.
Not only that,
You can't do that.
the 49ers already know Adam Peters well enough, and
Yes.
they're going, we want to take a draft pick away from you.
Yes,
we don't
of
want
course
to-
they do.
We're trying to get the competitive advantage.
We are serious competitors of theirs now. They're the class of the conference at this
Yeah,
point.
right.
They're not in the business of helping us. They
Correct.
want to force us to stay middling forever.
That's right.
So if they see anything like this, they're going to file a complaint. They're going to be right. So that's just my nice, free advice to our star quarterback who's excited and wants good players on this team, and I do too, but we have to do it a certain way that doesn't cost this team.
Got it. Yeah, no, exactly. And I mean, I would just say this too. He hasn't said anything that they could get
He
him on.
hasn't said anything.
Yeah, they haven't gotten anything.
But I'm scared to watch this pivot show now.
Right. Well, I mean,
Because he clearly was there.
yes, correct. I mean,
So did they sit down together at some point? If they talked about their days at Arizona State, great,
Yeah,
fine.
right.
If they say a word about his contract and Jaden says a word about it, you're tampering.
I have to think though. You know how this works. Ryan would also protect his guys.
I hope so.
Because I think Ryan also knows I'm not going to screw this rookie and screw the team I used to play for, that I played for twice, and screw them over.
Yes.
So
And also, Ryan, Jaden showed up. I didn't see it coming. What are you talking about?
right.
Oh, yeah, you were shocked that
Right.
he showed up for that?
Right.
No, you weren't.
Exactly.
Give me a break.
Yeah. So I mean, I think Jaden is smart enough, and I think the team is smart enough to get out ahead of it. Of like, hey man, we saw that TikTok. If you're asked about it, you have to say he's under contract. It'd be great to do it one day, but you have to not even hint that anything's
No.
going on right now
No.
at this moment.
No.
And I would hope too that they are actually saying to him, dude, don't worry. If he's available next year, he doesn't have a contract, and they're going to franchise him, and we get to trade for him
Yes.
probably for a slightly lesser package than whatever this year is, and we got to pay him. So
Adam Peters is going to, like, I would pull him aside and go, look, this is my history. Go look at the players we acquired with the 49ers.
Yeah.
Trent Williams, Christian McCaffrey. We're not
Right,
scared
yeah.
to do it.
That's right.
Dude, we're not scared to do it. But we need to find out what we have in year one. And trust me, if you do what we think you're going to do, we're going to get you help.
That's
and
right.
we've got the money to do it. But you got to let us do the process correctly. Please don't get in our way. That's what I would say to him. Focus on what you have here, not on what you don't have. And oh, by the way, McLaurin and Dotson are good.
Yep,
Trust us
that's
on
right.
that.
Exactly. Ocho
Trust
Cinco
us
told
on
you
that.
Like,
Trust us on that. McLaurin and Dotson are good. Trust us on that.
Yeah,
All right, we'll
exactly.
take a quick break. Lamont Roach Jr., the WBA super featherweight champion, is going to be fighting and defending his crown in D.C. on Friday night, is going to come in studio next. Bram, watch the show, ESPN 630, the Sports Capital. We have Lamont Roach Jr., Upper Marlboro's finest, going to put his WBA super featherweight belt on the line here at home on Friday night when he fights at the ESA down in Southeast. It's nice to have you back home, Lamont. Thanks for coming in studio today.
Thank
Good to have
you. And to correct you, it's Washington, D.C.'s finest.
Washington, D.C.'s
Yes.
finest? We don't do Upper Marlboro?
Yes.
Weren't
I
you
was
born in Upper
Born
Marlboro?
and raised in Washington, D.C.
Where?
Uptown.
Uptown?
Yeah, Leroy Park to be exact.
Yeah?
You have
Leroy
to go.
Park, right by Howard University?
Yes,
Very cool.
Howard University,
Yeah.
Shaw area. Yep.
Your son wants to be on the radio, man.
Yeah, he needs to get out.
Yeah. He can stick around here if he wants
That's
to.
good. Yeah, okay.
So, all right. So you're fighting this weekend. I
Yeah.
know, what was it, 7 years ago you fought, MGM?
Yep.
Right? When you first kind of turned professional.
Mm-hmm.
And you promised everybody after the fight you would defend a belt in town. Here we are, 2024, and you're doing that. So
Yeah, that's my first defense too at that. So I'm just glad I could fulfill that.
yeah. Why was it important for you to do it here?
Because these are the first people who believed in me. They've been seeing me since I was a kid. They knew that, hey, that's the champ right there. He's going to do something. He's going to go far. He's going to do this. He's going to do that. These people are my friends, my family, my loved ones. And, it's important to bring this back home because a lot of them couldn't come over to the different states to come see me fight.
Yeah.
So,
and this must be exciting for you to do this here.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah,
Where have you been training? In town? Have you been home?
yeah, I've been in town. I did my whole camp here. I did my entire camp here at our gym, at our gyms, and, getting local sparring and stuff like that and just putting my work in.
Yeah. And we have a rich history in this area in boxing. How did that kind of affect you growing up? Did you know when you were a kid that you wanted to follow this and get into this?
Well, as a kid, I wanted to play football, and football was my first love. And once I started growing with boxing, I started boxing when I was 9. So obviously, football was still my favorite sport. I think when I got about 14, it was like, all right, I'm about to go to high school, and they want me to play high school football. So I'm like, all right, I'm gonna see.
Yeah.
And Man, them dudes getting bigger, and I'm right here losing weight for my next fight and stuff like that. Like
There's no
big.
featherweights in the NFL, by the way.
Not at all.
Yeah.
Not at all. Yeah. So that was just like, all right, it's 1,000 people that's good in my position or whatever the case may be. I'm number one in my age and weight group in the entire country.
Yeah.
So, something gotta make sense.
Right.
So, ever since then, it's been no football. It's been boxing, strictly boxing, and we turned it up.
Where did you go to high school?
Dr. Henry A. Wise.
Yeah.
Up in Marlboro.
And you played football for them?
No,
you stopped.
I stopped right then. Them dudes was getting too big.
You're right. What did you want to play? Quarterback, receiver? What would you have done if you followed that journey?
When I was playing, before I got to the high school level, I was like a running back, linebacker. So. Going into high school, they wanted me to be like a hybrid coverage guy, probably like a rover or a strong safety, something like that.
Yeah. All right. So, but then you followed boxing, and you're trained by your dad.
Yes.
So, did that start from the get-go that your father kind of took you under his wing?
No, my dad. There's a funny story that probably people don't know. My dad was the cameraman at first.
He was?
Yeah, he just recorded everything. My original trainer who got me started and coached me all the way until 2017 before he passed away was my cousin Brandon Roach. He was an active firefighter, former military, and he was an amateur boxer as well, very good amateur boxer as well. He had a nice record. He fought and competed in the Seoul, Korea Olympic trials. I think he lost to Vernon Forrest, two-time world champ Vernon Forrest.
Yeah.
So, that's who gave us our bread and butter, and that's where we got our game from. That's where we got everything
So
from.
what was your father's background? He was a cameraman for you, but what else did he do?
My dad was, Washington D.C. guy. He was a D.C. guy coming up. He always told me when I was born, I changed his life.
Yeah.
So,
Clearly.
Yeah. he said I changed his life. So, my dad, see firsthand from what I see growing up, and my mom and my dad they're go-getters. They make no complaints. They make they make everything happen for me. I've had a wonderful life.
Yeah.
Since birth. And I can thank them for it 1,000%. And my dad, his background was just he came up in the streets of Washington D.C. Got his life together when I was born.
Yeah.
And made it happen for me.
Yeah.
He made it happen for me. And working as an engineer, chief engineer, he got me into boxing when I was 9. And, it's been a wrap since then. He was a cameraman. And then probably like a year into it, a year and a half, my cousin was like, hey, I'm going to need your help. He's like, look, I'm going to need your help. So my dad ain't really have a choice. He made my dad become a coach. And my dad learned. He was like my cousin's understudy. My cousin's like Master Chief. So he was like the Master Chief.
So your dad realized you had talent when you were young, and then knew, I got to bring somebody in here who knows what they're doing in boxing, right? To help you kind of come along and grow as a young amateur and then eventually a professional.
So my cousin had the vision. He's the one who started me boxing. He was my trainer. He was everything. He was already into boxing. He was already training professionals.
Yeah.
Then he started training amateurs, and that's when it took off. It was when my cousin asked for his help, my dad's help, and was like, you need to come on board and help me. We're gonna do this, and we're gonna take it to whatever level we can take it to.
Is it ever hard working with family? It's a very serious thing. There's so much on the line. Is it hard working with family or no for you?
For me, no. I've seen a lot of father-son duos not pan out too well.
Yeah.
But I tell my dad all the time and how thankful I am for him and how our relationship works in boxing. He knows how to separate being a father and being a coach.
Yeah. So tell me about the fight this weekend.
Fight this weekend, man. My opponent's Feargal McCory,
from
undefeated
Ireland.
from Ireland.
Yeah.
He's supposedly he's a crafty guy. I seen him fight.
Yeah.
He's a tough guy for sure. He's a tough guy. All his fights are won. His bread and butter is like pressure and coming forward and stuff like that. So he's a hard-nosed guy. I think he wants to apply pressure and try to, bring the fight to me, and that's going to make a case for a wonderful fight, man. A wonderful fight, I'm telling you, because I'm not gonna have to look for him. He's gonna be there to get hit all night.
Oh, all right. So, but you promised this 7 years later. You get to defend the title, but you want to win here. We're doing this in front of the hometown.
Yeah.
I thank you guys for giving me tickets. I'm gonna come and watch you fight this weekend. You want to win.
For sure, and I want to win very impressively and in great fashion.
Yeah. Your brother's on the card too?
Yep. He's making his pro debut.
Pro debut.
Yep.
What have you told him about that?
I've been like prepping him ever since for a long time. I wouldn't really have a sit down with him and be like, hey, this and that. It's just as it's going, because we're preparing for the fight at the same time in the same gym.
Yeah.
So it's every day is something. Like, so he gets the info, but I tell him like, this ain't no game. Ain't no headgears no more. Ain't no big fluffy gloves. There's small gloves. No headgear, and most of the time, all that stuff, all them punches, they hurt, no matter the guy hit hard or soft.
Yeah.
They're 8-ounce gloves with just a hand wrap under it.
Yeah. Is he good?
He's amazing. He's actually my favorite fighter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Could he be like you? Could he be a champion one day?
He could be better than me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why? Why do you say that?
He just got it. It's like an it factor.
Yeah.
He just got it. Like explosiveness, speed, the IQ. He just got it, and he's mean.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
Does that matter?
He's mean. Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Because people want to see knockouts, and I think even though he's a small guy, he fights at 115. But even though he's a small guy, I think he's gonna knock them dudes lights out.
Yeah.
Like, I think he just gonna knock them dudes dead, literally, and then he's gonna be like one of those guys. Like, oh, we need to see him fight because he's gonna knock this guy out. Just watch, just wait.
What about you? Do you get mean?
Yeah, for sure.
Because I mean, listen, we just met. You seem like a nice guy. I'm imagining a light switch is getting flipped Friday night.
Definitely.
So what happens? What do you turn into when it's fight night?
Tunnel vision. My nickname is the Reaper, and I think that's I turn into a Grim Reaper when I get in there.
Yeah. All right. So please answer this. You're a Washington football fan, right? Big football fan?
I am.
Okay. All right.
Definitely.
All right. You were about to break my heart. I was hoping.
No, I wouldn't do that to you.
Yeah. Dude, you grew up a big Redskin fan growing up around
huge
here?
Redskin fan. I'm still a Redskin fan.
Yeah.
I'm a secondary Commander fan. I'm a Redskin fan.
Well, that's fine. Yeah. What are your best memories of them growing up?
My best memories are just being supportive.
Yeah.
Obviously, we didn't win. The furthest we went is with RG3 one playoff win, and I don't know how long. I was born in '95.
Yeah.
So
you haven't seen it.
So I haven't seen it.
Right.
But I'm a Redskins fan. Going to the games are my best memories. Sundays at my house, watching football, food. It's just, what I'm saying, my grandfather is a diehard Redskin Commander fan, and we knew Chief Z. Z. So he was real good friends with Chief Z. So he used to come over, and I used to see him.
Yeah. Well, listen, we love having champions in town. I call the games for the Commanders. Come to the booth.
For sure.
Come in. After you defend your belt Friday night this fall, come into the booth with us. We'd love to have you stop by.
All right, cool. That'd be perfect.
All right, good. Good luck this weekend, and congratulations on being the champion of the world, and we hope to see you defend that on Friday night.
Thank you. I will, man. I will, and I'll make you guys proud.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming in here. That's
Thank you.
Lamont Roach Jr. from Washington, D.C. is going to defend his belt. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back. Brand Watch the Show, ESPN 630, the Sports Capital. All right, thanks again to Lamont Roach Jr., who just came in studio here. He's going to be fighting this weekend, defending his WBA super featherweight title. And I meant to say this before he left. World Championship Boxing returns to the district when DC's own Lamont Roach Jr. defends that WBA super featherweight championship against undefeated Feargal McCory in a can't-miss main event on Friday, June 28th at the Entertainment and Sports Arena. Doors will open at 5. You can get your tickets now at teamnoexcuse.com/tickets. Excuse is Excuse. NoXcuse,
Got it.
the letter XCuse
There you
when you go for tickets there. I'll be heading down there because they got me tickets, so I'm psyched to go see
you
him
go.
fight in person. And hopefully he'll, hang on to the belt in front of the home crowd.
mean-
Grew up in LaDroit Park and said 7 years ago, I'm going to defend my title in front of the fans in Washington, D.C., and he's making good on it this
Pretty
weekend.
awesome.
It's pretty cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah. A couple other things. We played the 2-minute clip where Ryan Clark said that Jaden Daniels showed up to a taping of The Pivot with Brandon Aiyuk and then insinuated, not only does Brandon Aiyuk believe he's not going to go back to the 49ers long term, not this year, long
Right,
term,
yep.
but he'd like to go to Washington, wink, 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 wink.
Sure, of course.
Adam Schefter apparently said the Commanders were interested but decided not to do the deal
Yep, right. Yep.
before the draft.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Because they didn't want to pay the money up front.
Right. The draft pick and the money.
The draft pick and the
It's
money.
always the catch-22 in the NFL now. No one wants to give up the pick and the cap space. That's
Had
asset
the
management.
49ers settled for a third-round pick because this team's going to have to pay the price to bring in the player, then it probably would have happened. But the 49ers didn't want to do that, and
Yeah.
now they're in a situation where Ayuk's going, you don't want to pay me, and you didn't want to trade me.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
And then the other part of the story was, and Clark said this because he just spoke to Aiyuk, that Aiyuk is meeting with the 49ers and their front office headed by John Lynch, probably to figure out if you're not going to pay me, then trade me.
That's right.
And he's probably not going to hear the answer he wants to hear that either.
Exactly. Yes, correct. Because the Niners have no interest in trading him now.
They don't unless someone is willing to give them a first-round pick. And it's also a little late in the game. You don't trade away a primary player now. You
right.
do it before the draft. Now, they did draft a receiver
Yep. Mhm.
in the late first round. So obviously the secession plan for either Aiyuk or Debo is in
It's in
play.
place. Yeah, it's in place.
It's
Yep.
in place, but they probably, and I don't blame them, want to play out a year with what they got.
Yep. Right. Exactly.
They're a championship contending team. They're not in the business of trading off parts. If for some reason their season went sideways, which I can't picture because of the team
Correct.
that they have,
Yeah.
then maybe they'd rethink this around the deadline and get a good asset from a contender for the rest of the year for Aiyuk and then let them play it out after that. But that's a big if and an unlikely if.
You know how this-
I mean, the NFL's weird and teams go up and down, but the 49ers look a little foolproof to be bad.
Yes. Well, they
Might not be great, but they're not going to be bad.
had 16 different quarterbacks and they were in the NFC Championship
they're-
game that year.
Their
So,
team's too good.
yeah, the other side of this as well is, you know how this works in locker rooms. He's looking around going, you paid every single player that's come up for a contract here, and you're not paying me. And that
Yeah.
probably pisses him off. I mean, when was the last time the Niners didn't pay one of their guys? The tackle, didn't they trade one of their D tackles at some point? That might be it. I don't even remember who it was.
Well, they wouldn't pay Armstead last year.
Yes,
He left.
He left, right.
He
But-
left. But they've already paid Bosa, Hargrave, Fred Warner.
Yep.
Like you run out of. They
McCaffrey
paid.
got an extension.
They
Is it
paid him
lower?
McCaffrey. They've paid Trent Williams. They're going to have to pay Purdy.
Yep, that's right.
Period.
Exactly. And that
They've
number-
paid Debo.
Yep.
So the ones that fell through the cracks so far are Armstead and now Aiyuk.
That's right.
Aiyuk's they paid Kittle. They're
Yes.
they're writing on the wall of they can't pay everybody.
That's
You
right.
literally can't pay everybody. And I honestly think that they want to play at this point want to play out the year and see who's better, Debo or Aiyuk,
I agree.
and pay either let go of Samuel if it's a depreciating value because he's been injured a lot,
Yep.
and give the money to Aiyuk, or pay or keep Debo and trade Aiyuk.
Yep.
I think that's what they want to do, and they want to get through the year now because they didn't get the asset they wanted. But Ayuk's making a lot of noise.
That's right.
Publicly making a lot of noise now. Most of the time, the smart teams ignore it
Right. Exactly.
and just go, we know you're going to show up and play for that $15 million. And oh, by the way, if you don't, the contract tolls.
That's right.
It doesn't expire. It just means we have your rights for another year again. So it's silly. He could pull the show up for the minimum.
Right.
That could happen.
yeah.
And forfeit a certain amount of money, but show up for the minimum amount of games so that his contract does expire when it's supposed to.
That's right. I think the other
But
side
you're
of
giving up a lot of money doing that.
Sure. I think the other side of this, though, as well, is I think this is both the 49ers and the Commanders. They're going, it's June 25th.
Yeah.
Come talk to us when training camp rolls around. And if you don't show up, then we'll see what actually is going to happen. Because then we get to start finding you. And that's actually not our choice. That's an NFL thing. Remember they changed that where teams could, negate the fines?
Yeah.
Now it's a thing of we don't control that anymore. So you're going to lose money every single day you don't show up. So I don't think he's going to do that either.
Yeah.
They're going to force his hand until training camp happens, and they know he has to show up. Is what
They're
essentially what it is.
in no rush to do anything right now.
Yeah, right. Right,
They aren't.
Exactly.
I mean, the offseason program's over for everybody. Nobody's practicing again until the end of July.
Yeah.
There's no rush to literally do anything like this. Like, what would acquiring Brandon Aiyuk do for the next 6 weeks? Nothing. So he's going to be barking up a tree that he's not going to get the answer he wants. He's not.
It's funny, too. We've seen this before in the past where a player is, disgruntled, wants to get traded or whatever. He picked the two worst teams to want to get traded from one to the other.
Yeah.
One of them, who owns his rights, is going, we don't have to trade you. You're on your last year of your deal. We know you have to play because then the contract tolls if you don't. And the Commanders are going, we're in no shape to go on a Super Bowl run in year one with Jaden Daniels. Like, it's a bad match, actually, in terms of forcing your way out.
Yeah, right. And secondarily, and this is minor stuff, but I'll point to two examples of this, and this would be one of them. If I'm John Lynch, I'm not sure I want to trade anything with Adam Peters right now if it makes Washington better. I don't think perceptually it's going to look very good. They didn't leave on bad terms or anything. Peters got the job that Lynch has. If Lynch had retired, Peters would have become the 49ers GM, top decision maker.
Yeah.
But he's not going anywhere, so he leaves and takes this opportunity here. Well, if you're John Lynch, you don't want to help him make him look good.
Yep, right.
You really don't.
Mm-hmm.
So
right.
It's not a great match in that way. Now, if you're going to get a major return, okay. And I'll point to, it's very rare that teams in the same division trade with one another in something that matters.
Sure.
Like the trading with each other at the 5th, 6th, 7th round, whatever. That
Flipping
just
two roster bubble players.
nobody typically thinks much of that.
Yeah.
But notably, the Commanders traded with the Eagles at the top of the second round, which means you are going to get real players. And the player that the Eagles selected was one of the highest rated secondary players. So Washington, could have just helped Philadelphia. At the same time, they got more capital back and they ended up with Sammerstill, and maybe they're happy doing that too. And maybe everybody's happy. But this just points to Peters has a runway here.
Yep.
He's allowed to do things like this because the last thing you want to do if you're the Commanders is make the Eagles better.
That's right. Sure.
That's the last thing you want to do.
Yeah.
They're the team to chase.
Right.
Like, I know Dallas won the division last year, but they're the team to chase right now in the division. Why would you want to make them better? Well, they've got the runway to do it.
Yep.
Because they have the goodwill of the fans. Everyone thinks they know what they're doing right now. The ownership obviously loves them. And they got more draft capital. It wasn't like they were fleeced or anything like that. And so they gave up this player. If that guy turns out to be good for Philadelphia, well, you help them.
Yep.
If he doesn't,
right,
then you look even smarter. But the point is, you don't normally make deals of that caliber with teams in your division. It's rare because you don't want to help them or you don't want to be perceived as helping them. In this case with Aiyuk, if I'm John Lynch, I am thinking twice about sending him to Adam Peters because if he helps them and makes them better and gets them kind of on an even quicker trajectory, that doesn't look great.
Sure.
You're the team to chase.
Right.
You're not trading Brandon Aiyuk to Dallas. You're not trading him to Philadelphia. Those are your prime competitors, right? You're not trading him to the Rams. Like, you wouldn't do something like that. Washington, you'd feel a little safer at this point doing it if you got the right thing in return. But I'm not sure I'd want to help Adam Peters if I'm John Lynch.
No, I agree with that. I agree with that 100%. Like, I think they're looking at it by going, this would make their wider. I've said this too, as we've said, Aiyuk is not the top tier, but he's the tier below. But also, as a unit, all of a sudden, those three guys are all of a sudden super hard to cover for any team in the NFL.
Terry Aiyuk is a nasty combo.
Right. And then
It is.
Jahan in the slot, all of a sudden, if
Yes.
he looks like what we think he's going to be, that's a nasty combo
And
or triad.
yes, and two of them are young.
Yep.
And one of them remains on a rookie contract.
Yep.
And I'll get to him in a moment now because, coincidentally, Keim wrote about him.
Yep. Right.
And the piece he wrote coming off of the offseason was the three players that are intriguing to the Commanders coaching staff. And I think they are three of the biggest question marks about this season, all of which are first-round picks,
Yep.
all of which whose roles on this team are up in the air.
Mm-hmm.
3 first-round picks, and we're not totally sure. I mean, obviously Emmanuel Forbes is a cornerback, but is he a number 1 cornerback like most first-round picks are supposed to be? How does he fit in with this particular defense? Jamin Davis, who's switching positions now for the third time since being, from middle linebacker to outside linebacker to now what looks to be somewhat primary edge rusher short of injuries and forcing him to go back into that spot. But that's the hope with him. And Dotson, who's clearly a receiver, but where?
Right.
How best to be utilized?
Right.
Where are you going to put him? And Keim wrote this about him because if you're not going to bring in someone like Aiyuk that's a clear number 1A to Terry, then you need, and you're banking on, at least in year one, that Dotson's going to emerge and look closer to the rookie than he did in year two.
Yep.
I think a lot of what happened with him last year had to do with scheme, personally.
Yes, of course.
That's what I think.
And play calling.
Right. But when you read some of the numbers would read a different way. If you watch it closely, though, I think you'd come to a very different conclusion about the seasons that he's had here. His first year was honestly gangbusters, with the exception of he missed a lot of time with a hamstring injury.
That's right.
But he came out hot, was making big play after big play down the field because he's an exceptional route runner with very soft hands. What happened last year, I think, was they miscast him badly in a predictable offense that had a bad run pass ratio. And it affected him. This part, I don't excuse him for. You got to play to your best ability no matter what they put you in.
Sure.
Even if I am, at least educated enough to know they misused you.
Right.
At the same time, when you do get your opportunities, you need to come through. So there's a little bit of both that happened here. I am more blaming the scheme and Bieniemy for how they used him, but still, he had way too many drops. He clearly was, and a lot of guys were. He wasn't happy with his role. Mm-hmm. Well, you got to figure that out.
The other side of that too is, we've talked about it at length, that before even the halfway point of the season, we've talked about it, how Terry was mad at Bieniemy, and he had post game comment. Then we had John Allen, going full do-rag John after the Giants game. You know how this works. And this isn't just the Commanders or NFL. This is any workplace that a young, professional sees the guys that have been around for a long time going, this ain't it. And that's also hard to, I know you have to watch yourself, but you know how this works. When those guys are starting to go, this ain't it, all of a sudden it's very easy for you to go, all right, I'm just going to go out there and whatever happens kind of happens. I think there's a layer to that as well.
Ron missed on a lot of things. The hiring of Bieniemy ended up being a mistake, mainly because they empowered him too much, I think. I don't think he's not a bad coach.
Yeah.
His scheme became predictable.
Yep.
I was going, I know what they're doing. That's not good.
That was in minicamp.
Bad.
Yeah.
When I'm walking out there going, I know what they're doing, well, then I think Sean McDermott knows what they're doing too.
Right.
And the Bills did.
Dan Quinn.
Their linebackers were standing in their passing lanes.
Yeah, right.
Actually, at the snap, ran to the spot the ball was going to be thrown to.
It's crazy.
I went, oh my God. This is not good. That's really bad. You're not hiding a thing.
Insane.
Right. But at the same time, the bigger, larger issue is the more and more I think about it, it was the real message from Ron and Bieniemy was, guys, this is our collective last chance to prove to this group we need to be here.
Right.
Because look what happened. If we go bust, I don't know what's going to happen here.
That's right. Yep. Exactly.
And look what happened. The coaching staff changed. Half the roster's gone.
Yep.
The whole thing blew up because they didn't earn the right to make a case for themselves.
Right.
I blame the coaches mainly for that. What Ron had going for him was they played hard for him.
That's right.
Once he took the hands off the wheel, they stopped doing so. Once he empowered somebody that wasn't getting along with the players, and it was early, that coulda, woulda, and should have been fixed, and it wasn't.
Yep.
Dotson falls into the category of someone who was completely miscast. This happens on every team, and we talked about Gibson yesterday. Austin Eckler's here now. Gibson isn't. I think they misutilized him for a few years, that they could have done more production-wise with him. They just never figured him out, right? So this happens throughout the years with every team's got somebody. But the Dotson one last year, the routes they were asking him to run, the not going down the field very often, it just was totally, in my opinion, misutilizing what he can do. And he felt it and knew it and said this about it. He said, I wasn't a fan of my season last year, so I went really hard this offseason making sure that I'm a lot better. And he talked about a strength coach that he was working with. And he said this, last year I just didn't feel like myself, but I'm starting to feel like I'm getting my swagger back a little bit. I think what he's saying here, and I talked to him after the season ended, and I remember asking him, what unlocks you again? And right immediately out of his mouth, he goes, let me be a route runner.
Okay.
Bieniemy did not. He wanted him to do very short routes, very quick passes, get the ball out of Sam's hands. Hopefully it's accurate. He'll get him on the run.
Yeah,
He's got a lot of speed. He's very shifty. We saw a couple touchdowns he scored that were crazy his rookie year. Remember, there was a crazy one against the Giants where he slipped between defenders and scored. Yeah. He is very slippery that way. But where he's really, really, really dangerous is down the field because his route running is exceptional. Well, they took that away from him.
Yeah.
Once they took that away from him, now all of a sudden he's sitting there going, why don't they see it?
Right. Exactly.
Why aren't you using my strengths?
Well, this is something that I've talked about in the modern NFL, and Ron did this a lot. Instead of just letting guys play what they thrive at doing, like I think the first one is Jamin Davis, right? We knew Jamin Davis couldn't be a middle linebacker pretty much instantaneously. Yet they tried it for way too long, then put him, at outside linebacker, and we still knew it wasn't really working out unless he actually literally just put his speed on, right? Exactly.
That's right.
And that was the biggest gripe, not only with Bieniemy, but with Ron too. They were, round hole square pegging this thing. Where it was like these players, no, I don't do that well. I do this well. Meet me halfway, bare minimum, but I don't even think they were doing that last year.
Terry and Jahan are both exceptional deep ball threats.
That's right. Yes.
Even at their size, neither one of them is particularly big.
Yes.
Both of them are fast. Terry is sneaky, straight line fast.
Right.
Dotson's quick fast.
Yeah.
Both have great hands, and both of them are exceptional in one-on-one.
I was going to say, Terry.
Exceptional at it.
Terry, people will probably call me crazy, but he reminds me of Santana Moss in that he can pull the top off the defense, but also catch that 5-yard out and he's gone because nobody's in front of him all of a sudden. Like, he reminds me of Santana in that way.
Yeah, they are.
And it's one of the most dangerous wide receiver combos you can have.
Yes. This is the numbers that Kime posted about Dotson, and here's where the numbers will lie to you. Okay, it says this. Aki will be trying to incorporate his downfield skills more, which I was yelling about.
Yeah, right.
Daniels was considered an excellent deep ball passer in college, and Dotson said he was so happy that they drafted him.
Sure.
In 2022, Dotson gained 20 or more yards on 28.6% of his catches. Last year, that plummeted to 10%. His average yards per target was 14.35 as a rookie compared to 9.25 last season. Those numbers would suggest he had a bad year. No, he wasn't running down the field. He wasn't told to run down the field. And when the ball was thrown to him, it was thrown underneath, as if he's a slot receiver.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
As if he is a tight end.
Right. He's waiting to basket
As if he's a running back coming back out of the backfield.
Yeah.
They misutilized him badly. So this offense, and considering Kingsbury loves to throw it down the field, I have a sense are going to give him the opportunity to unlock that again. But it is third offense for him in 3 years.
True.
Right? He's not the biggest guy, and they did point out the one thing that they want to see him, work on, which this is where Kime's at his best. He gets the coaches to literally say, what do we want to see from this guy?
Yep.
And the receivers coach, Bobby Engram, said this. Press releases are his focus. He's figuring out what the next step is for him and how to get better. He knows if he's really good at the line, it will allow him to be more dominant down the field. He has such great feet in terms of his quickness at the line. The emphasis has been on his hands, not allowing guys to be as physical as they want to be. He's not a big guy.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
And so the other team need to slow him down at the line. They give him a free release the way he runs routes. He's a magician at it. You're dead. And he's got great hands. He's reliable. So they have figured out, get up on the line, press this dude. You're bigger than him.
Yep. Right. Yeah.
Do it. Slow him down, jam him, get him out of his route early. He's going to be in trouble. Last year, all of that was mitigated because he was never running down the field.
Yeah.
And if the ball was going to him, it was always underneath. And you know what? A defense will take that all day with a threat like that.
Yeah.
They misutilized him. It's not going to happen this year. And there was this one moment, and everybody saw it when Terry was screaming and yelling. He loved when Dotson made this catch. What he was emphasizing, actually, was how he got off the line. So hopefully.
Right.
Hopefully.
Sure. Yeah.
The other two players you talked about, which we can talk about another time, was Jamin Davis and his transition to edge rusher. And even Dan Quinn gave a quote of, give him some time.
Yeah,
We're asking him to do something very different here. Don't be too hard on him. He's never been an edge rusher before.
Yeah.
Like, give us a minute with him. And the other one was Emmanuel Forbes, who is a wild card.
Of course. Yeah.
He's an
absolutely.
all-time wild card in this.
Yeah.
So he lands on a defense with a defensive coordinator and a head coach who have been known to turn cornerbacks into interception machines.
Right.
That's what he did in college and why he was drafted. They looked aside that he weighs 105 pounds and said, yeah, but he ball hawks, has great hands, and when it's in his hands, half the time it's going back to the house.
That's right.
We want that. And this was something that they desperately needed. They weren't getting any turnovers the year before, and they thought they had a front that would force pressure to give players like this an opportunity. Didn't pan out that way because the front never played to the level that they needed to. The whole thing fell apart.
That's right.
And then Forbes' size got in the way. You're going to tell him to go press somebody. A.J. Brown's going to run him over.
That's right. Yeah.
Or you get him into one-on-one coverage with someone like A.J.
Jumping
Brown.
over him. Yeah.
he's getting boxed out.
Right, exactly.
It's Wembenyama, you know, like
Wembenyama, Nate Robinson.
correct. It's not good, right?
Yeah.
But in this case, can they generate pressure and get him some spots? Can they get his swagger back? And can they just show him, look what we did with Diggs. Look what we did with Deron Bland. Look what we've done with all these corners through the years. We're going to get you back to where you were. Does that mean he's a number 1 corner? I don't know.
Yeah.
Does that mean he's a number 2 corner? I hope so, because that's an answer to a problem if that's the case. If he's just a starter, he doesn't have to be the guy on A.J. Brown. We can maybe draft that guy or find that guy.
Yeah.
But if he's a good number 2, I'm happy. If he ascends up to him number 1, huge job well done for the coaching staff this year. But he's the wild card of the wild cards.
I was going to say, if he's a number 2 as well, we've seen this before as well. If you have a better starting quarterback, like if Benjamin St. Juste steps up and starts locking guys down and people end up having to throw his way, we've seen it in this defense where he's going to be the guy getting actually more action than, whoever else is ahead of him. So if he ends up staying in that second role, I think it'll be perfect for him too, because he's going to get more balls thrown his way, and that means, hopefully more interceptions.
Another change has occurred down there. I want to talk about that for a moment here.
Sure. Yeah.
So the team just announced all of the different hires and promotions of a number of the names, and you won't know them. Yeah. Some of them are scouts. Some of them are working in the front office in different capacities. Some of the names that we had heard from other teams recently that were hired. And then there were some other names that kind of popped up that are like in communications and all the people I know that I'm going to work with that, won't matter to you.
That's
right.
Yeah.
But this one will be notable because it was the first real hire that Josh Harris did when he took over as the team. The one thing that they did in the front office was install Eugene Shen as like a analytics expert.
Yep.
And I don't remember what his title was, but they brought him in. And remember, when they traded Montez Sweat, it was cited as we're going in a different direction analytically as we look at cap, production, money spent, how are we going to go? What was the word? Ron used a word for it.
Yeah,
He used a word for
flexibility.
No, it was like something about the direction had changed.
Right.
About how they were thinking about.
I wish
things.
I could remember it. We definitely talked about it.
Yeah, they used a word that they were anyway, and they were following the advice of Eugene Shen on some of these big decisions early last year, specifically about trading Montez Sweat.
Right.
He was cited for specifically it was his advice that you're not going to pay him this amount of money, so you might as well trade him now. They felt like they got the right offer for him. Not unlike the Aiyuk thing, they said at the time they weren't giving Montez Sweat away. They were going to only if they got what they thought was a valuable asset, which ended up being a second-round pick for him, would they do it? And that's what they got from Chicago. Yeah. Had Chicago had offered like a fourth-round pick, they were going to say no to that. Right. Anyway, he's left.
Yes. Okay.
So that's happened today.
Is that he made this one move and Peters doesn't like that? I mean, is that what you think? Or?
So it says this, a statement said this, after successfully supporting the transition to new ownership last season, Eugene Shen will be transitioning out of the Washington Commanders organization. He is currently in discussions to support a different initiative within the Josh Harris group. So probably going to a different sports organization because that's what he does. And it actually goes across, the spectrum of analytics used to make decisions. And he's talked a lot about undervalued positions and all that type of stuff. And he's using the math to figure out cap, what is value, and roster builds and production and all that type of stuff. So that's interesting and important.
Was the quote you're talking about a little bit of a shift in terms of the paradigm?
Paradigm shift. The paradigm shift. Yes, the paradigm
Johnny
shift.
On the spot over here.
We had the paradigm shift.
How we're going to construct things.
Yes, the paradigm shift.
Not you, Ron.
So this was the first. We're baselining it.
Yep.
It's the one thing that, like, Chase Young, obviously now that everybody knows what his injury thing was, like, I couldn't talk about it at the time, but like now that everybody knows, everyone understands what was going on there, and he was never going to get a long-term extension for sure.
And you weren't going to, you can't just sign him to like a middling deal. He wasn't going to do that. Like, we know that.
No, but as it turned out, he is on a very high, the number's big, but he has to earn it all. He has to be able to play, and that's in question. And I wish him the best, and I hope it works out for him. Montez was a different story. Montez is a very good player, very high-level player. He had not posted the types of numbers that warranted the type of contract that he got from Chicago, but they seem to have seen it in the second half of the season and believe that he'll be that.
Yeah.
At the same time, as the season was cratering, and they're baselining the roster, and they're going to hire a new front office and a new coach, obviously, I think they probably thought, he's one guy. It's a big contract.
Yeah.
Why give it to him now? You know, I guess in hindsight, they could have played it out, let him get to a franchise tag, and let Adam Peters make a decision about
we
it.
were kind of yelling and screaming about.
They could have. But I think their point was, and Eugene Shen's, I think, point about this was, you're getting value now for him.
Yeah.
If in the end you're just going to trade him anyway, it might not even be as good as this.
Sure.
So you might as well just take it now. It's the one of the things that happened last year that I could argue, I don't know, I'd kind of like to have him right now.
I agree.
Because here we are looking for an edge rusher.
Say what was behind him was literally nothing.
Correct.
So, yeah.
Like here we are looking for an edge rusher, and we had one in him. Right. He may not be Bosa, but he's good.
Yes.
So I would have been interested, truth telling, what would Dan Quinn, Joe Witt, had they known, and Adam Peters for that matter, what would you have thought about that player and making a decision about him on a franchise tag as opposed to him not being here? I'd like to hear what they're, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter. But Eugene Shen is leaving because the person who's going to run analytics was hired out from another organization to run under Adam Peters, so it is another shift away. And they just described it as he helped them transition and get them thinking about these things differently than was happening before.
Got it. I mean,
but I was a touch surprised,
Yeah.
because he was just hired by them.
Sure. I mean, it's also Adam Peters' show. He's going to say, look, you did a good job for the 1 year. I would say this, too. Like, Peters has actually done a really good job throughout this offseason. We've heard it from multiple sources about how he's been in contact with all these people, both the players and the front office people. Like, remember Sam Howell was glowing about Peters, about how Peters literally walked around with him at Commanders Park saying, hey, man, like, this is what we're thinking. We're probably going to trade you. We know you're probably not the quarterback of the future here, but we're going to do the best we can to get you a gig somewhere else.
That's right.
That's what we've heard the whole offseason, is that Peters has tried to do that. So I'm sure they kind of kept this, stringing along to see who else they would bring in, and they did bring in someone else.
Yeah, I'm going to guess that he knew this was happening the whole time.
Probably, yeah. Probably. He was probably straight up with him. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And they probably gave him the opportunity to look for something else on your own, but we'll take care of you. And it sounds like they're doing that anyway.
On your point of Sweat, too, I mean, for all we know, Adam Peters might have gone, you know what, I have that runway, like we just talked about with Jahan, and said, you know what, I'd love to have Sweat, but it actually just doesn't fit in the plans right now. Let's kind of kick that one down the road. And
we don't need another big contract right now. Look what they did this offseason. No big contracts.
Right.
It sounds like if you read out the Aiyuk thing, they would have given it to him if the asset back to San Francisco was minor.
That's right.
And because it wasn't, they said no, and we'll see you next year. And Ayuk's going, but I really, really, really want to play with Jaden Daniels.
Yeah, right. And they're going, play with the toys that you got here.
You're going to have to deal with it now.
Yeah.
We also don't want to divvy out money like this till we restructure the roster.
Yeah.
Talk to us next year. Trust me, they're going to spend big on something.
Oh, yeah, totally. The next,
I don't know what,
next
but it's going to
offseason.
be. They have cap room again.
Yeah.
So they're going to spend on something. They know, just like Peters knows, that Brock Purdy window opened a lot of things up for the 49ers to go get players. You think we're not, if we get off to the start they're looking for really out of Daniels, you don't think they're going to do that next year? Of course they are. Are they going to go get a major edge rusher? Probably. Are they going to draft a tackle or get one? Probably.
Yeah.
Probably draft one.
Right.
More likely. Are they going to get another receiver like Brandon Aiyuk? Probably. They're going to be able to do it.
Right.
But they got to baseline everything first.
And imagine, too, I mean, in a perfect world, that Jahan and Terry end up being great together, and someone like McCaffrey steps up and all of a sudden is a good to great third wide receiver. All of a sudden,
That's right.
You're playing with house money anyways because he's not making anything.
If Jahan steps up,
right.
Then all of a sudden it's a different conversation. You might even be able to go, all right, let's go get the top tier tackle.
That's right.
Spend the money on that. Go get the edge rusher, and we could get a good pro number 3 behind Terry and Jahan because we just need a number 3.
Right, exactly.
And then we don't have to spend $30 million a year on that receiver.
Yep.
All right, we'll be right back. Bram, watch the show, ESPN 630 Sports Capital.